The snap of splintering wood froze me mid-step. I dropped the grocery bags on the front porch and took off running toward the creek, boots sliding in the wet mud as I pushed past tall grass and thorny weeds. When the view cleared, I saw them, 3 men in reflective yellow vests, hammering my bridge with sledgehammers like it was a condemned shack. My heart dropped, standing nearby. Arms folded and smiling with satisfaction was a woman in a pressed navy pantsuit and pearls. Her heels sank slightly in the dirt, but she didn't care. She didn't belong here and made sure everyone knew it. "Hey," I yelled, nearly tripping down the embankment. "What the hell do you think you're doing? That's my property." The woman turned slowly, her necklace catching the light like a blade. "Mr. Marshall, I presume?" she said with a silky voice. "I'm Eleanor Harrington, president of the Sycamore Heights Homeowners Association. This structure violates our community standards." I stopped cold. Community standards? Lady, that bridge is on my land. My family's owned this farm since before your fancy subdivision even existed. She offered a thin smile that didn't touch her eyes and held out a document in a plastic sleeve. "Our recent survey indicates that this creek marks the property boundary. Any structure crossing it requires HOA approval. As you can see, the demolition has been approved and paid for." I took the paper. It had stamps, barcodes, official-looking language, but something was off. I'd studied these maps. When I built the bridge last year, I knew exactly where my property line sat, 10 feet beyond the far side of the creek. This was a lie. "This is wrong," I muttered behind her. My neighbor Diane stood on her elevated back deck, phone in hand, recording the whole thing. She'd complained before about my unsightly tractor using the bridge to get to the backfields. I dismissed it then as neighborhood noise. That was a mistake. "I want to see the original survey," I demanded, pointing at the bulldozers rolling in from behind a hedge. "And I want this demolition stopped right now." Eleanor clicked her watch. "Feel free to voice your concerns at the next HOA board meeting, first Tuesday of the month. 7 p.m. residents only," she added, eyes narrowing. I stood there helpless. As the beams cracked, groaned, and finally collapsed into the flowing water below. That bridge wasn't just wood and nails. It was built from trees my grandfather had planted after the Dust Bowl. It connected the land, the memories, the soul of this place. Eleanor handed me a business card. "My husband's company, Sycamore Development Group, is very interested in this parcel. We'd love to discuss the future of your charming little farm." My jaw clenched as I read the name, Thomas Harrington, Executive Director, so that was the game. "We want progress." "Mr. Marshall," Eleanor said smoothly, brushing invisible dust from her lapel. "Growth. Your quaint property sits at the edge of a thriving community. You've become a bit out of place, don't you think? You people think I'll just roll over and sell because you smashed a bridge," I growled. Eleanor's smirk widened. "Most do, eventually." My fingers curled around the card. "My family survived wars, the Depression, and 12 feet of floodwater in '83. You're just another storm. We'll survive you too." That seemed to irritate her as she strutted away, the afternoon sun glinting off her SUV. I noticed something new. A small surveillance camera, tucked under Diane's roofline, aimed directly at my barn and field. When did that get installed? Who was watching that night? I skipped dinner. Instead, I spread out old land deeds, maps, and county plats across my kitchen table. I compared every one to Eleanor's fraudulent document. My suspicions were confirmed. The creek had always cut straight through my land, not served as its edge. A knock rattled the door around 10:30 p.m. I flicked on the porch light, heart pounding. A beat-up sedan sat at the end of the driveway. A man in a rumpled suit stepped forward, holding a file folder. "Mr. Marshall," he said, hat in hand. Name's Frank Cooper. I was Sycamore Heights surveyor until they fired me last month. Opened the door a crack. What do you want? I think you deserve to know what they're planning. We sat in my kitchen under the dull hum of the overhead fan. Frank looked tired. Guilt clung to him like sweat. His voice was low, wary like someone who'd been looking over his shoulder for a while. They wanted me to redraw the boundaries to show the creek as the edge, he explained. Said it was cleaner that way, marketable. I told Emmett. Wasn't legal. Next day, I was replaced. He handed me a flash drive, emails, internal memos. Development plans for a strip mall, luxury townhomes right where your back pasture sits. They want your land, Mr. Marshall. The bridge was just the first shot. Why are you telling me this? I asked, because I've worked 30 years. Without selling my name for $1. I'm not about to start now. And because, ... they'll come after others too. After he left, I sat in the dark, staring out at the broken bridge. The water ran black beneath the ruined planks. Somewhere in that flow was a warning. These people don't play fair. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, greater than backing down would be. Why's these people get what they want, one way or another? I dropped the curtain. I wasn't just being watched. I was being hunted by morning. The bridge wasn't my only problem. Trash littered the edge of the creek-hold recliners, busted, TV's black garbage bags torn open and spilling into the water. I walked the length of the field in disbelief. This wasn't just dumping. It was staged. From her porch, Diane sipped coffee like a queen on her balcony throne. Her eyes followed me, unblinking. When I met her gaze, she turned and went inside. Not. 15 minutes later, a white pickup with a county seal pulled into my driveway. A young woman in uniform stepped out with a clipboard. Mr. Marshall, I'm responding to an environmental complaint. Reports of illegal dumping in a waterway. Kidding, I said, stunned. I'm afraid not. We received photographic evidence this morning. You were observed disposing of household waste into the creek. That's a lie. I've been cleaning it up since dawn. Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. I still have to issue the citation. $5,000 fine. I stared at the paper in her hand, and then my phone buzzed again. Greater than board meeting tomorrow. Let's discuss a fair price for your troublesome property. My blood boiled. I called Frank back immediately. They're framing me now. Dumping trash, filing fake reports. This is more than a zoning dispute. It's war. He didn't sound surprised. That's how they work. Quiet pressure, then public shame. They'll try to destroy your reputation before they ever touch your title. I need proof. County records, maps, zoning approvals. Then go to the courthouse, he said. Get the original survey. Just ... be careful. Eleanor has friends there. High ones. The next morning, I drove to the county courthouse with copies of every deed my family had ever filed. Hours in a maze of hallways, I finally found the records clerk, a kind older woman who took my ID, and returned with a stack of files that hadn't seen daylight in years. I spread them out on a massive oak table. My finger traced the creek's natural bend, clearly shown to run deep within my borders. Every document proved what I knew in my bones. The land was mine. The bridge was mine. And the Harringtons were thieves. My phone buzzed again. Frank Cooper. Be careful at records office. H watches county employees. Too late, as I stepped outside, a sleek black SUV idled across the street. The tinted window rolled down. Thomas Harrington looked at me, smiled and rolled it back up. Back at the farm, the black SUV's image stuck in my mind like a splinter. I parked my truck by the barn, pulled out the copies I'd made at the records office, and pinned them across the living room wall. Old survey maps, aerial photographs, historical zoning files. I needed to be absolutely certain. I compared the flow of the creek across a 40-year timeline. One thing was clear: the water hadn't moved an inch. But someone wanted it to look like it had. Eleanor's falsified survey shifted the creek's position by 20 feet, just enough to claim the bridge and part of the southern pasture as HOA jurisdiction. Not sloppy strategic. A knock rattled my door again. For the second time that week, I opened it to find help from someone I never expected. Marcus, a neighbor who lived across the tree line, stood holding a rolled-up set of plans. "I saw the news," he said. "They tried to survey my property last month too. Said it was part of a drainage reassessment. But this?" He unrolled the paper Sycamore Heights Phase 4 expansion plan. It cut straight through my fence line. And into his backyard, he grinned wryly. They forgot we farmers talk. That night, I scanned every page into my computer and emailed them to my lawyer friend, Lexi, who was already prepping documents. I also BCC'd my cousin Shauna at the Tri-County Tribune. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to strike back. As the days passed, a bigger picture began to emerge. Eleanor's bridge stunt wasn't the start, it was just the latest chapter. With Frank's help, I combed through development records. Over the past 10 years, Eleanor and her husband had overseen 3 separate phases of Sycamore Heights, expansion each one marked by sudden boundary changes. Quiet acquisitions of aging farms and surprise demolitions. They didn't need bulldozers at first. They used paperwork. And when that failed, they used intimidation. We found 5 families who'd been forced to sell after being cited for obscure violations. 1 elderly couple left after repeated fines and surveillance complaints. Another had their access road cut off by a zoning reassessment and sold at half-value. Frank shook his head, disgusted. "She's turning farmland into suburbs and calling it revitalization." My hand hovered over the phone as I prepared the next wave of emails to the county commissioner. The media and the Department of Environmental Protection let Eleanor feel the pressure now. The next morning, I left the farm early to deliver the hard copies to Shayna at the newspaper office downtown. I'd barely passed the county line when the same black SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. Same model, same plates. I took a few detours, down old farm roads, through a church parking lot. They followed, not even discreetly. I pulled into a hardware store, parked, and waited. The SUV crept past, slowed, then kept moving. The driver didn't wave this time. He didn't have to. Thomas Harrington wasn't trying to intimidate me anymore. He was reminding me this was his game, his town, and I just stepped onto his board. I bought a set of trail cameras before heading home. That night, I installed them along the fence line and tree rows, watching for new stakes, movement, anything out of place. If they were going to wage a silent war, I'd fight in the shadows too. I woke to the smell of engine grease and the low rumble of unfamiliar tires. I pulled on boots and grabbed my coat. When I reached the southern field, my heart stopped. Orange construction flags lined a new property boundary 20 feet inside my land. Right beside them was a fresh sign, bolted into the ground. Future site, Sycamore Heights Phase 4, Retail and KOA. And residential district, the fury hit like a firestorm. I ripped every stake from the ground and loaded the sign into my truck bed. I wasn't just angry, was betrayed. By the system, by the process, by every false smile at the HOA meetings. And then I heard the screech of a screen door. Diane stood on her back steps again, arms folded. "You shouldn't touch those. They're officially trespassing," I shot back. "You people didn't buy this land. You're just pretending to." Her smirk was smug and venomous. "You know Judge Bennett plays golf with the Harringtons every Saturday, right? I wonder whose side he'll take in court. The respected developers or the dirt farmer?" stung more than I expected, because it was true. I didn't look like much. Old boots, a worn flannel, calloused hands, and a barn that needed paint. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was what I used to be. Before my father's heart attack pulled me back to the farm, I was a civil engineer. Spent 8 years working for one of the largest construction firms in the Midwest. Oversaw projects with million-dollar budgets, negotiated with zoning boards, reviewed land surveys for legality. I didn't just know how this game was played. I helped write the damn playbook. I grabbed a folder from the closet, my old credentials, PE license, development certificates, university transcripts, all still valid. And soon, very useful. Later that evening, I suited up in something they didn't expect. A pressed shirt, clean boots, and a blazer with my engineering association pin. Then I drove to the Sycamore Heights Community Center for their monthly HOA meeting. The room fell silent the moment I entered. Eleanor stood at the podium, lips tightening. "Mr. Marshall," she said slowly, "this is a private meeting for residents only." I held up the forged survey they'd used against me. "Since you claim my land as part of your neighborhood, I guess that makes me a resident." A murmur spread through the room. People glanced at one another. Some were confused. Others looked ... curious. Eleanor's voice wavered. "We have a packed agenda tonight. Perhaps your concerns can be addressed at a later." An older gentleman near the front stood. "I'd like to hear what he has to say." "I second that." Came another voice. Eleanor swallowed hard, and then I stepped to the mic. The microphone trembled slightly in my hand, not from nerves, but from sheer restraint. I looked out over the sea of expensive cardigans and freshly manicured nails. Most residents here had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. That was about to change. "Many of you may not know me," I began. "My name's Thomas Marshall. My family's farm borders Sycamore Heights. My grandfather planted pecans where your park is now. I built a bridge across my creek last year. Last week, your HOA tore it down." I held up the forged survey. Eleanor. "Harrington claims this document proves my bridge violated HOA regulations. But this is a lie. I went to the county courthouse and pulled the original survey. The creek is entirely on my land. What you're looking at is a forged boundary created to justify trespassing and property damage." Murmurs began to ripple through the audience. "I was fined for illegal dumping when your board members staged photos and submitted false claims. And this," I unfolded a Phase 4 expansion blueprint, "is what they're building. On my land, on your neighbor's land, without consent." Eleanor banged the gavel, her face flushed. "This is outrageous. Fear-mongering. Mr. Marshall is angry and lashing out. We have a process for disputes. This isn't the venue." But then Marcus, from the front row, stood up again. "Last week I caught a man with a tripod in my backyard. I thought it was weird. Then Mr. Marshall showed me these plans. I recognized the same expansion lines running through my property too." Gasps turned into open murmuring. A woman near the back raised her hand. "I got a notice about a recreational trail realignment. Is that part of this?" Eleanor tried to keep order, slamming her gavel over and over. "Everyone, please. These are half-truths being weaponized by someone resisting progress." That's when I dropped the final card. I worked as a licensed civil engineer for 8 years. I know zoning law. I know boundary fraud. And I've submitted this entire packet of documents to the county, the state licensing board, and the press. Dead silence. I left the podium without another word as I walked back to my truck. I could hear the chaos breaking loose inside the community center. Arguments broke out. Board members started shifting blame. Residents shouted over each other, demanding answers. The curtain had been pulled back by morning. I woke to a full inbox. People who once glared at me over their hedges were now emailing to ask for copies of the documents, 3 families found similar stakes in their yards. One even reported that a county appraiser had shown up weeks ago, claiming routine reassessment. A group of residents gathered in the park that evening without Eleanor's permission to form an independent investigation committee. I wasn't invited, but Marcus texted me a photo of the sign they made. Reclaim Sycamore, stand against corruption within 72 hours. Nearly 50% of residents signed a petition to freeze all HOA activity pending an internal audit. Eleanor tried to block it, but the board's vice president, under pressure from her neighbors, sided with the residents and called for a vote of no confidence. The iron grip Eleanor once had on Sycamore Heights was slipping. The next morning, news broke across town. Fraud allegations rock Sycamore Heights. HOA County to launch full investigation. A local TV station aired the story using clips from the HOA meeting. I watched from my porch as my face showed up on the screen, holding the blueprint like evidence in a courtroom. Soon after, a pair of county investigators visited my farm. They had warrants to seize records from the HOA office and requested my full cooperation. I handed them Frank Cooper's flash drive, my printed maps, and the photo of the illegal Phase 4 sign. Frank, now reinstated and placed under county protection, handed over his own files, internal emails, correspondence with the Harringtons, and even voice recordings. It was a damning pile of evidence. Eleanor and Thomas were named in a civil racketeering lawsuit, and a criminal inquiry followed for forgery, bribery, and environmental fraud. Bank accounts were frozen, permits revoked, progress halted. 3 weeks later, a group of neighbors, former HOA members, even some who had once supported Eleanor, showed up in my driveway. "We can't undo what happened," Marcus said, "but we'd like to help fix what was broken." I looked past him at the group holding saws, drills, planks of lumber, and coolers of food. My eyes landed on the younger couple from 3 doors down. The wife had emailed me a few days back, saying her grandfather used to cross that bridge with my dad to hunt rabbits. That bridge connected more than land. It connected people. Over the next 2 weekends, we worked from sunrise to dusk. Neighbors I barely knew helped cut timber and sand planks. The kids painted signs. People brought old photos of the farm, sharing memories like puzzle pieces of forgotten history. The new bridge was stronger than the last, but it wasn't mine alone anymore. The day we finished, the last nail still warm, we held a cookout on the field by the water. Someone brought a banjo. Someone else baked a pie. And for the first time in years, it felt like a community again. A real one, not managed by power or money, but built with hands, sweat, and the truth. 6 months later, Eleanor Harrington pled no contest to multiple charges. Her husband, Thomas, faced disbarment and a financial fraud trial. The county revoked their licenses. Sycamore Development Group was dissolved under state order. Residents voted to disband the HOA entirely in its place. They created a volunteer council that actually asked people what they wanted. They even offered me a seat on it. I declined. My place was on the land, not in meetings. Diane moved out of Sycamore Heights shortly after Eleanor's arrest. Her house was sold to a young family who brought over cookies the first week they moved. They asked if their kids could walk the bridge to get to the school bus faster. "Anytime," I said. I still get letters from nearby towns asking for advice on HOA overreach. I usually send them Frank's number or Lexi's, but I do include a note. Greater than progress is good, but only if it doesn't steal the past to fund the future. Watch your boundaries, stand your ground, and never let them tear down what makes your percent. You know why your land yours? The new bridge spans the same creek my grandfather used to fish. The sun sets behind it just like it always has. Some things, no matter how hard people try to claim them, just don't belong to anyone else. They're ours forever.